Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. I'm sorry I haven't posted in a while, just school, I had a long break and such like that, moving, whatever, and all that. But yeah, welcome to this premiere. This is going to be my 2024 hurricane season forecast, obviously for April 2nd, and I will start posting regularly again, sorry. But yeah, we're just going to scroll through these slides, and yeah, let's get started. So let's start with the El Nino 3.4 index. The latest value is 1.280. It dipped below +1 for a bit, but the Pacific has warmed up quite a bit again. Though we do not expect this to stick, as we are expected to go down into a neutral and eventually a La Nina quite quickly. But as you can see over time, since January, the Pacific has cooled quite a lot from around +1.7, +1.8. And obviously this means for the Atlantic that there is going to be more storms as warmer temperatures and less shear is going to take place. So yeah, as we can see the forecast here, right now we're at around a 87% chance of an El Nino. So this is for April. Obviously we see quickly into May that goes way down until a 70% chance of neutral. So clearly we are expected within the next months to drop below +0.5. And then of course those chances increase. And then when we get to around early hurricane season, June, we are expected to get into a La Nina, with the La Nina chances skyrocketing around July, 50 to 60%. I do expect them to go higher than that as this La Nina chances keep increasing over time for each forecast each month. So I do expect those La Nina chances to increase quicker for later forecasts, and I do think we could reach a La Nina by June. And of course, we can see that La Nina persists throughout the entire hurricane season. And then the chances start to decrease very little towards the end of the year, but that is outside the hurricane season. And even if it was inside the hurricane season, we see they stay well above 60% and near 70% chance of a La Nina. So the latest hurricane season, sea surface temperature anomaly, that's what I meant to say. So we do see some cool waters off the coast of Peru. But other than that, warm waters in the Pacific still, as we are still above +1. But we do also see widespread above average temperatures across the Atlantic. We are definitely seeing like July temperatures, even though we're only in April. That is what I've seen. But of course, we have the main above average sea surface temperatures in the western main development region into the southern Caribbean and into the Gulf of Mexico. And that's actually going to give us a hint on what we could see in the Atlantic this year, where most of the systems are going to be the hot spots and stuff like that. But yeah, so we're going to go into the model parameters a bit now. So we're going to be looking at the pressure, so like Bermuda High, and then we're going to be looking at precipitation and temperature for the sea surface temperature anomalies. I'm not going to show shear parameters, as not enough of the models had that parameter available, or at least in the latest run. And the three models are going to be CANSIPS, ECMWF seasonal, and NMME, but that one we're not going to take as seriously. We're going to mainly use CANSIPS and ECMWF seasonal. So obviously, moving on, we see the starting with the pressure. We do see CANSIPS is showing quite a strong Bermuda High, 1,024 millibars, and obviously widespread effects. And this is, these models are going to be showing the time period of around July, August, September, June, July, August. So that's August and September area, peak season, and what we can really forecast right now. So that strong Bermuda High, that's really going to push systems towards the Caribbean and into the Gulf of Mexico. We could see some systems go towards southern Florida and up the East Coast, but we're not really going to see it as much, not as much as previous years. Strong Bermuda High going to push most of the systems that are going to hit land into the Gulf and Caribbean. And we're going to have some fish storms, obviously, but not as much. So like 2020, I can't say if it's going to be that active. We're not going to go there at all. I can't even, and to say that it's going to have as many landfalls would be a way too big of a stretch, at least for right now. but what I can say is that there's going to be a lot more landfalls than usual. And then we'll get to the exact the areas who could see more landfalls later in the video. But yeah, and then we go to ECMWF seasonal, a little weaker, but we're still 1,024 millibars, but not weaker. So like more towards the Azores, so it's not gonna have as much of an effect, but it's still gonna have a much stronger effect than most seasons. And while it's showing a little more favorable for East Coast systems than the CAN-SIPs, most of the systems that were to hit land would still go into the Caribbean and into the Gulf of Mexico. So pretty much the same thing as CAN-SIPs, maybe just a little more east shifted, but still Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean centered for these models. And NMME doesn't have the pressure parameter, so we're going to show NMME in a bit. And like I said, for sheer, the latest runs weren't really available from what I could tell for some of these, so I'm not going to show that. I have a graphic for it though. We'll get to share later. Anyway, CAN-SIPs sea surface temperature anomaly. We do see a lot, pretty much Atlantic-wide above average sea surface temperatures, mainly in the main development region and into the Caribbean, and into the southern and central Gulf of Mexico, as we can see. ECMWF seasonal, pretty much the entire Caribbean, western and central MDR, well above average sea surface temperatures. Again, the entire Atlantic is pretty much above average in sea surface temperatures, and into the Gulf of Mexico as well. And up the East Coast too, but like I said, I don't think a lot of systems are going to make it up there, not as much as usual at least. And we're moving kind of quick here because it's late. Obviously, I want to get this information to you guys fast. Just quick explanation, and then but yeah. Anyway, precipitation. So CAN-SIPs compared to ECMWF seasonal, we can see a pattern here, which we'll get to later. But we can see how the Caribbean, mainly the Caribbean, we see, and the Eastern MDR. So the Eastern MDR, well above average precipitation, so that means a lot of low pressure systems are going to be coming off, spitting out tropical systems if there's favorable conditions, which there will be, at least we expect. And into the Caribbean, we see both CAN-SIPs and ECMWF seasonal. Central Southern Caribbean, well above average sea surface temperatures, way more than usual. As we can see, those blue color starting to appear, which for the models, like, it just shows well above average sea surface temperatures. That's what it means on this graphic. And then we do see, if you look closely, the well above average precipitation goes into the eastern and central Gulf, a little bit into the Bay of Campeche on ECMWF seasonal, but we're not really going to focus on that because we'll get to that in a bit. But we do see a lot of it goes into the central and eastern Gulf, into the ECMWF seasonal. And then for the CAN-SIPs, it goes into the eastern central Gulf. So that could show maybe more low pressure systems going into the area. It's really hard to say because that's not always what it means. It's hard to say what there could be a lot of factors on why there is more precipitation, but what I think is one of the things could be just more low pressure systems going through the area, higher risk of tropical systems. We'll get to that in a second. Now we're at NMME, and we do see well above average precipitation in the Eastern MDR. So like I said earlier, lots of low pressure systems and into the Central Caribbean, but also we see that going in both July, August, September, and June, July, August. So August, September part of the year, we do see that above average precipitation going towards the eastern and central Gulf. So Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, and the Florida Panhandle and Big Bend could mean more low pressure systems going towards that area. Again, it's a lot of factors. It could really mean anything, but due to it being hurricane season, I do think that's what it means. And then just showing you the sea surface temperatures real quick here. Well above average sea surface temperatures in the MDR, Southern Caribbean, and into the Bay of Campeche and Southern Gulf of Mexico. I don't really think we're going to see a lot of Bay of Campeche storms because even though it has a lot of precipitation, that's much more near the equator, and that has much less likely to be more low pressure systems other than just more rainstorms and such. than organized low pressure systems, which cause tropical systems. But yeah, now we're at the shear shear graphic. So slightly below average shear, slightly to moderately below average shear for much of the Gulf of Mexico, central and western MDR. So once those low pressure systems get into that area, favorable conditions due to less shear, so less stuff ripping them apart, especially when they go into the Caribbean where we have a moderately to highly below average shear, especially for the very southern Caribbean. So if systems go into the central Caribbean, whether they take a more north turn towards the Gulf of Mexico, which they could, due to the much less amount of shear, strengthen a lot, along with the above average sea surface temperatures, making a worrying storm. Obviously, we saw that a lot in 2020 and 2005, which are analogs for this year. We're not going to really go into analogs, though many analogs such as 1995, 2016, 2010, 2005, 2020 went into making these forecasts, the graphics I'm showing you. But we're not going to get all into that, at least in this video. But the Atlantic wide above average sea surface temperatures, we can see orange means slightly above average, pretty much the whole entire Atlantic, moderately above average. We mainly saw this in the Euro seasonal and NMME. For pretty much the entire Gulf of Mexico, or at least the eastern and central Gulf of Mexico, all the way through the central and western MDR, we could have moderately above average sea surface temperatures, which obviously paired with that below average shear is going to create strong storms. And then, as we saw in the models, well above average sea surface temperatures for the Caribbean, which again is going to strengthen storms a lot along with that moderately to highly below average shear. And the stronger Bermuda high, obviously, we saw above average precipitation in the eastern MDR. So a lot of low pressure systems that's going to push them towards the Caribbean and into the Gulf of Mexico. Some people are saying Texas for this year is going to be a big spot. It's not really consistent. We have some people saying Texas, some people not saying Texas. It's going to depend on what model you're using. While I do think Texas is going to be at a higher risk this year, I do not think they will be at the highest risk. Or as high as some people are saying. I don't think the Bermuda high is going to be so strong to where it pushes all of these systems towards Texas. Now, and for that I mean mainly August and September. October and November usually have different patterns, so I do think that Texas could be at a much higher risk for them. But for August, September, peak season, what we can really forecast right now, it's not going to be that way. It's going to mainly be what I think the highest risk. It's eastern Louisiana, Alabama and Mississippi coastlines, and the Florida Panhandle and Big Bend is where a lot of those systems, the Bermuda high could push towards those regions. And of course, some could go towards southern Florida. I do think southern Florida is a higher risk this year, not the highest risk, but one of the higher risks. And I do think we could have a very good chance of a southern Florida getting a system. Y'all haven't got, at least Miami-Dade region, y'all haven't got something in a while. I do think you will get something this year. So landfall risk officially. Notable risk. It means you are at average to maybe somewhat above that normal risk, but it's not really that crazy above normal. It's not like you're at the highest risk. So that's the Carolinas. I do think y'all are maybe a very slightly above average risk, but you're not going to be the hot spot. Unless a system can go up the Florida East Coast, I don't really think it'll get that much this year. But I do think you get like a tropical storm or something weaker. Maybe if it catches onto the Gulf Stream, you could get a stronger system, but again, it's hard to predict. And then, like I said, southern Florida, that's why they're in the high risk. And Texas, a high risk too. But again, that would probably be mainly later October range, which again, it's hard to predict, different pattern. Highest risk, like I said, eastern Louisiana, Florida, Panhandle, Big Bend, Alabama, Mississippi coasts. That's where I think the Bermuda high will push most of these systems. So obviously, eastern, central Gulf Coast risk. And then Tampa, places like that. Again, you guys are in the eastern Gulf, but I don't think they're going to have that kind of curvature. And I think the Bermuda high will push it still a little more bit west towards different parts of the Big Bend, not Tampa, which at that point is not really the Big Bend, it's just a peninsula. And then, of course, with the analogs, we had a lot of Florida Panhandle, Big Bend, and especially to Alabama. Like the Mobile, Alabama region's got a lot of systems in the analogs I stated earlier, along with other regions. But here's the overview map. So the warm MDR will strengthen low pressure systems. A lot of low pressure systems coming off the coast. A strong Bermuda high can push some towards southern Florida, up the east coast, to a slightly above normal risk. That's the risk area 3. And then in the yellow, that strong Bermuda high will push the systems more west, make those east coast waters and regions less active, less likely to get something this year. But most of the systems could be pushed towards the Caribbean, where the warm Caribbean and Gulf waters obviously will fuel systems we saw in the models. And once they go towards the Caribbean, they will go toward, like, a lot of them could go towards the Gulf. While some, like I said, will go towards southern Florida. I do think the southeast Florida could get something this year. But yeah, and then they're pushed into the Gulf of Mexico, or they could hit Cuba and the Yucatan, which is not that surprising this year. And they go into the risk area 1, the highest risk area, like I just showed. Florida Panhandle, Big Bend, Alabama, Mississippi coast, and eastern Louisiana. And then maybe later seasons towards October, systems could be pushed more west towards Texas. That's why I put a second risk area, as well as for western Louisiana. But then again, it's a little too much to say right now, because different patterns arise in October and November, so it's hard to say. So here's my numbers. And first of all, the exact ACE range, accumulated cyclone energy, and the exact landfall numbers, how much systems I think will hit land and what general strengths. I'll be adding in around a month, the early May update. I think not that confident yet on what's going to happen there. But yeah, 20 to 24 named storms, 9 to 12 hurricanes, and 5 to 6 major hurricanes. On average, there's 3 major hurricanes. I think it's 7 hurricanes, 7 hurricanes, and 14 named storms. So definitely an above average season. Hyperactive is what some people call it, and very above average ACE. Again, the exact range will come in the later update. But yeah, very above average. So hotspots for tropical cyclone development and strengthening will be the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, and Western MDR, like we showed. Once they get towards the Western MDR, higher sea surface temperatures and below average shear are going to help them. And then the northern Caribbean islands, obviously, like Cuba is what I meant to say there, and like the Yucatan, which could be hit kind of depending on how west it goes. And then, of course, eastern Louisiana to the Florida Big Bend. Again, the Florida Big Bend. It's a weird term, but that stops north of Tampa, and then Tampa is just a peninsula. I explained that earlier. But yeah, and then so like Alabama, Mississippi, Florida Panhandle, stuff like that. And then is in the main risk. 70% chance of above normal season, 20% chance of an average season, 10% chance of a below normal season are going to be my probabilities. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you guys have a great night. And I was doing the scrolling thing because sometimes when I just go through the slides as usual, the stream won't show some slides, which is annoying, and it just throws the whole video off. So yeah. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great night, like I said, and goodbye.